Hello, listeners and viewers. Welcome to the very first edition of Behind the Microphone. I'm Daniel Peragine, and we are excited to have our special first guest to the BTM podcast show. We welcome Travis Pedersen. Travis, thank you for joining us here.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure. And, before we jump into this episode, I know you were texting me over the weekend as we were kind of putting together the outline of this show. And it seems like you were able to finally get back out into the golf course. So how did that feel?
Last week was beautiful. We had some great weather, mid 70s to lower 80s. However, waking up this morning in beautiful Wisconsin, we now have some snow on the ground and I believe a high of 38 today. So our
It is
beautiful
crazy.
golf weather, I think, was maybe short-lived here.
Right. And it's got to be tough because, I play a good fair share of golf as well. And, where I'm at in South Carolina, it's, we may have a month or two of pretty cold temperatures, but you could still get out there and play midday,
Mhm.
in the high 40s, low 50s. But now we're kind of more or less mid 70s, 80s, maybe pushing into the 90s. So it's you could play year round and be on the course and don't have to play a lot of simulators. But for someone like you who likes to play as much as possible as well, how tough is it to have to go into simulators when it's just frigid temperatures outside and get back onto the course? Would you say that it's definitely there's nothing like the actual greens essentially?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm going to be outside if I can. Like, I'm not a huge
Sure.
fan of doing simulators. I'll do them for like fun. But I'd rather be outside and be in the sunshine and, getting some exercise versus sitting in a dark room playing
Oh,
golf.
absolutely, yeah. Well, simulators are, become so popular, especially over the
Yeah.
last few years, and it's great to just get everyone together and hang out, and I find it to be a lot of fun. But if you're trying to take up the sport as serious as possible, which, quite frankly, for folks like me and you in the amateur arena, it's a crazy stat of the percentage of golfers that shoot into the 90s. It is quite a difficult sport to get into that. There is not a lot of people that even shoot into the 90s, so it's quite incredible. So
Yeah.
it takes
So
a
I
lot of
mean,
time.
so you think about the game, right? A lot of that
Right.
is muscle memory, and when you don't have the opportunity for, let's just say, from November through, well, here we are mid-April, um, to not be outside and play. I mean, you lose your swing a little bit, and probably takes you a good month to find it again, and before you know it, the season's over. So
Right.
taking every advantage that you can to get outside and play is probably the best way to keep your game strong.
And I've gotten to know you pretty well, and just like me, we both played a lot of sports back in the day. But I will tell you, out of all the sports that I've played, and I realized after my first year of college, I better get into something that I thought I could do, because going pro was not one of them. And I know you realized that pretty quickly as well. But the one sport that I just never took up was golf. I never took it up in middle school or high school.
Mhm.
My father especially, he was a big time baseball player. Tried out for the Mets when he was very very young. He was still in his teenage years, so he was a pretty good player during his time. But just never took up the game of golf. And you know what? If I had to look back at one regret, that would be it.
Mhm.
I just didn't think of anything. Everyone was attending, the football games, the baseball games, basketball games. It just golf never seemed to fit right in, even though it had soared in popularity really because of Tiger Woods, right?
Right.
That epic run that he had. But really, once I moved down to South Carolina from the north, obviously started taking up golf and wanted to be on the course as much as possible. But I'm sure you can remember just in the start of it, what a frustrating game it could be. People could just be like, I ain't shooting 130, 140. I'm walking right off. But time and persistence, you get there. And now to shoot in the mid 90s, we're kind of high fiving ourselves. Not a bad round.
It's still frustrating. I don't think it
Oh,
ever
yeah.
becomes, a game that you're not frustrated with in some way, shape, or form. And your mindset going into a round too has a lot to do with that. If you're going in and got too much on your mind and, just trying to smack the ball as
Absolutely.
hard as you can, I mean, yeah, you're going to struggle.
Well, hey, this is a great segue into our episode. So, Travis, nearly 20 years experience in the packaging industry. That is quite incredible. And currently you are a territory sales manager in the flexible films department. And
Hmm.
so, 20 years, almost 20
Yeah.
years. What do you got? Another 2 or 3 years. It's incredible how time really flies by.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think, you look back on a career that's gone that long,
Yeah.
20 years really doesn't feel like 20 years, maybe half that, so
Well, mhm.
knowing that you're making me feel old, Dan. Thanks.
Well, I want to point out that it's impressive. I mean, you look at a lot of folks on LinkedIn, especially. Everyone is switching gears is kind of the new norm, right?
Hmm.
So there's just not a lot of stories out there anymore of people being in a particular business or an industry for an extended amount of period, right? I mean, people are
Hmm.
always trying to do new things as well. And hey, I mean, we get one shot at the work life, right? We might as well
Yep.
try that sometimes. But I think consistency goes a very, very long way. So, and packaging, I think, in many ways provides a lot for people as well. It's
Hmm.
such a vital part of our everyday lives. Even if people don't think about it, it is. So
Yeah.
you're in an industry that is extremely critical to the pipeline for life. I think in many ways. So,
Hmm.
but I just wanted to point that out, and I'm excited to have you on because you've got quite a resume, being in a few different sectors. So you touch on a lot of packaging components. So let's kind of get into it. After you graduated high school and going into college, what was your intention going into school? So let's talk about a little bit where you your upbringing and where you went to and what you studied.
Okay. So I graduated from high school and then went to the University of Wisconsin Stout. Um, Really, I went not with a great plan in mind. It was probably after the first semester, I declared my major as a business major. Um, and after probably year one, it was, I decided it probably wasn't something I was gonna
Right.
want to do for the rest of my life, at least strictly as a business major, right?
Right.
Um, so I think it was maybe year two. I was still living in the dorms with some friends, and they were going to school for packaging, and said, "Hey, why don't you audit a packaging class? Might be right up your alley." So
Right.
no clue what to expect. When audited a class, really enjoyed it. For me, the strictly business side was a little not really really what I wanted to do. I liked packaging from what I saw
Hmm.
in that one class, really because it was more hands on, right? So,
Hmm.
and it focused on so many different avenues of because packaging is so broad, right? So
Right.
we talked about materials, so your plastics, your corrugateds, really any packaging material you can probably think of. Um, Food packaging, that was a big component of the program, as well as a lot of dynamics testing of packaging. So it's crazy how much truly goes into um, a product and the packaging that protects it.
And it's amazing because at that time there wasn't a whole tremendous amount of packaging schools out there, but now it's popping up all over the place. It's
When
amazing how far the industry has really expanded.
Yeah, and I think when I was in school, I think there were 5 schools. So
Wow.
UW Stout, where I went, Michigan State, Clemson, um, Rochester Institute of Technology out in New York, and Cal Poly. So
Amazing.
I know there are other schools that have adopted the program. I'm just glad to see it expanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's so many different. It's amazing, especially for those that are really new into it. It's amazing how many components go into a manufacturing plant and having to ship it from point A to point B, or especially from point A to retail. Right?
Hmm.
It is amazing. Also, the logistics side. of the business as well. So it is quite extensive. So getting into packaging school, I'm sure for your, if you want to make a recommendation, I'm sure that is for those that may be interested, definitely worth the opportunity to get into it.
Oh, absolutely. If you're looking for something that is hands-on, that will challenge you, and that you can be lucrative, I would highly suggest it.
Trade schools too, right? That is
Mhm.
growing like crazy. You look at kind of what where I'm based out of South Carolina, pretty rich manufacturing state. And trade schools, there's always going to be demand for it. Always
Yeah.
going to be a need to hire, and so people need products. So trade schools have a lot of benefits to what we could do. And that's kind of the trend that's been happening, right? It's kind of the golden ticket to get your bachelor's degree, and was always mine as well, and a lot of people. But now, you could go to trade school and be pretty successful in
Yeah,
life and what you can
absolutely.
do. So sometimes the bachelor is not the end all be all these
Right.
days. It's amazing how different times have changed, for
Mhm.
sure.
I agree.
So
I agree.
and we experienced that, right? Especially during the COVID era and everything, where manufacturing became such a critical component to getting products in the fight against it. And so
Mhm.
having people was a massive need for quite some time. It continues to still be to this day. So
Yeah, and I think
um,
we found out how critical packaging was during COVID as
absolutely.
well. Just, you know, if you didn't have the components to get your product out the door,
Tuts,
then you're looking at empty shelves. So,
right?
you know, and
Yeah,
it wasn't just packaging. It was a lot of things that
it's the whole
we
supply
saw.
chain.
The whole supply chain.
The
Yeah,
whole
thank you.
supply chain for quite some
Yeah.
time. Yeah, you got backed up ports. I mean, there were a lot of concerns during that
Mhm.
time. So let's kind of jump into now. The real life, right?
Sure.
You have a great time in college. It was a great experience. I can go back to so many different memories. But now you're at college graduation. You've touched. I think we're able to touch a lot of components in going into packaging school. So,
Mhm.
and then you got into corrugate. You decided to jump into that industry. So, what out of all the packaging that you were able to do, what got you interested to begin your career doing corrugated?
So it's actually twofold. First of all, I had a family member in the corrugated industry. My uncle worked for a corrugated company, and it was senior my senior project, my capstone project was a paper and a presentation, and I was struggling to find something that was really resonating with me as far as packaging went. And
Hmm.
I gave him a call. I said, "Hey, I've seen what you do. I'm really interested in it. I really have no way of researching this. There isn't a lot out there."
Right.
So I met with him. I met with a couple of his coworkers, kind of about what they did and how they spent their time, and got really into what was POP, or point of purchase displays, was what
Okay.
his company had been doing. So um, I started researching that more and more, and understanding, you know, it's not only a packaging product or a tool, but it's also very much a sales and marketing tool. So it combined two things I was very interested in, right? The
So
packaging side of it, and then the business and the sales side, the marketing, the sexy
yeah.
part of it. So
Yeah, and retail. I mean, so you're going to your I mean, you go to down the grocery store, every aisle there's going to be a pop up
hmm yeah,
display, right? So,
yeah.
that's all over the place. And during your time, because you were in corrugated for how long were you in the industry for?
15 years.
15
Yeah,
years. Oh, wow.
long
So,
time.
yeah, for
Went fast.
sure. And
Yeah.
did you primarily stay in the retail? Because and the reason why I asked that question is during that time, people were still going to, especially to the malls and the big box retailers and things like that. However, things were starting to shift a little bit. I can't remember
hmm
the exact time frame, but it was during that area where all of a sudden e-commerce was starting to pick up. It's kind of an amazing story. Amazon shipping books, and now all of a sudden you can practically go find whatever you need on
Right,
Amazon
right.
and get it the next day, right, with Prime. So, and you're seeing a lot of major companies like Walmart Pluses of the world. They're they're jumping into or already into that e-commerce
Yeah.
model. These
Yeah. Well,
distribution sites are impressive.
at the time, Walmart and Target and everyone was trying to compete with or catch up to Amazon and what their model was starting to become.
Right.
So it definitely changed the landscape. I think it was around 2007 or so, maybe 2008, where Walmart had kind of changed and went from the store that you walk in and it had just displays everywhere to more of a clean store model to kind of, that pendulum swinging, really far to one way where it was almost, a barren land to back to the middle. And then, of course, with the omni channel, if you will, of e-commerce, I mean, that really changed the landscape of it as well. So,
Yeah.
um,
And then it just went crazy. Like I said, during 2020 and 21, I mean, everything was buying online at that point, So it was it just skyrocketed in business. So yeah, so during that time, while you were in the industry, it seems like the shift was starting to get into the e-commerce side. So how was that demand? Was it just incredible?
I mean, it certainly changed the way that companies were going to market and their marketing dollars that were being spent on in-store. Now, the one thing that we did see some companies trying to adapt and kind of change was the way that they were changing their packaging as it was shipping out
Right.
of DCs. So, how do you bring that in-store experience home? We did some experimentations with printing the inside of a corrugated box. So when you opened it up, you saw, the same images that you would see at retail. So there were things like that going on at the time to really, combat
Sure.
or change the landscape of how you have packages delivered.
It's creative, right? Like you just said, it's an in-store at-home experience. It really
Yeah.
is. So that's incredible. So now, obviously, all that time in the business, you decided to transition away from corrugate and jump into plastic. So let me ask you, before you jumped into plastics, when you were during packaging school, did you have a lot of dealings with the plastic side of knowledge before jumping into it?
Yes. Yeah. So you think about what you could potentially package products with, right? Plastics, and I would say the majority of the focus was on plastics and corrugated.
Right.
There were a lot of classes that we had, and different classes about plastics, injection molding, really broad plastics experience. So while the medium was changing, right, going from corrugated to plastic, for me personally, it was still the same kind of selling process and everything
Sure.
else. So to me, the hardest part of jumping from corrugated to plastics was really learning about what it was we were selling.
Yeah. And so while we're on that topic, I mean, did you see it as an opportunity for you and your career to jump into it? And what made you want to? Because there's so many different types of of plastics, right? You got bags, mattress film, sheeting, food films, all these
Yep.
sorts of flexible products. So many of them. What made you want to get into shrink bundling film in particular?
I think it was a jumping off point, right? It was somewhere to start within plastics. It was something new to learn, which is I love learning about new products. I love learning about new materials, and this was
Right.
a great opportunity to start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so describe to our listeners and viewers here of here behind the microphone
Mhm.
podcast. What in terms of markets, I mean, shrink film has had quite an evolution, right? Over the years, it's become very, very popular. So, just kind of explain to everyone why shrink bundling films has become popular, especially over the last decade or two. What's really the benefits of it, and do you see shrink film and basically can you shrink wrap anything?
Well, okay, so let's start with the first part of that question there, those comments that you're looking for. So, where do we start to see these products come into place. I'd say we're looking at more of the consumer food products or beverages, really. And I don't want to limit it to just that, because it can do so much more. So really anywhere where a product, you can collate, or you can bundle multiples of them together, and they can survive a distribution environment without the need for you know a box, or corner boards or something like that. That's where a bundling film really plays well. The other great thing about it is that in terms of the amount of material needed versus something like a corrugated box, I mean, it's minimal. um,
Right.
so from just a pure costing standpoint, I mean, you're looking at something that, if you can do it and if it can survive, I mean, it's a way better option than
Right.
trying to deal with the
Well,
cost of corrugated.
Well, also, I think probably the material reduction of it as well, right? You're able to
Absolutely.
take away some pieces. So, what's kind of the big advantage with plastics per se in terms of an inventory standpoint for end users?
Well, I mean, we could probably quantify it, right? Like how many boxes it would take to put I don't know, let's just for conversation's sake, a case of soda. If you put a case of soda in a corrugated box, how many boxes is that going to use? How many fit on a truck? These are all things that we can quantify and show that actually, I mean, if you were using corrugated, or if you were using like a bundling film, you're going to be using way less material than you would with a corrugated type product or a
Mhm,
paperboard type product.
mhm. And
Mhm.
and in terms of efficiencies, what is plastics able to do on that end for people, especially in high speed environments? Does it just make things move a lot quicker in the process?
Oh, I would definitely say so. I mean,
Hmm.
we've seen it at various customers. I mean, the amount of product that they're able to output, um, with a shrink overwrap machine versus a case erector and a corrugator, I mean, it's pretty phenomenal.
Well, let's jump into this topic here, and this is a good one. We see about sustainability right all over the
Hmm.
place. Corrugate has a lot of pluses in that,
Sure.
so especially the breaking down aspect of it and whatnot. And I'm sure you could dive a little bit more into that. But in terms of plastics, I think it's really come quite a ways, because there's so many different types of resins now that can be used that are recycled. And
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about the circular economy that plastics can provide, and really the positive impacts that it can create. Because I think sustainability is great for anybody that is able to really invest into it.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of time, a lot of R&D, a lot of effort to get into sustainability, but there's so many long-term advantages to it as well. So I really give kudos to everybody getting into sustainability. But now that you are in the plastic side of it, tell us what is the circular economy, and why has it become a pretty popular term, especially these days?
Yeah. Well, I think circular economy, or what I would consider like the cradle to grave like aspect of it, right? So
Hmm.
from the initial production of a resin to a film, then becoming recycled, coming back and being utilized in those products again, and then going back out into the marketplace. I mean, that's really what a circular economy is, right?
Right.
So it's bringing back those things that we put out, and ensuring that they come back and are being used in a way that is, um, not only meets sustainability goals of companies, that people are looking for, but is doing good for the environment. And I wish we could say we're further along than our European counterparts, but I think, as we both know, um, we're still evolving. And I think what we're
Yeah.
going to see over the next 5 years is that evolution start to really come to fruition, and you know
And,
more and more people start using those PCR type of
right.
materials.
And you see, let's talk about Europe for example. I mean, you're seeing a lot of
Hmm.
that through legislation,
Yeah.
being passed.
Yeah.
So here in the states, it's probably just nitpicking a few things that then all of a sudden has to be adjusted to, right? I mean, kind of,
Hmm.
for example, you look at straws and what you can use or can't use, right? More on a
Yep.
local city level. So. Um, it seems like Europe has just kind of taken the path of let's do this all kind of in one
Yep.
shot. So
Yeah,
they're a little bit
kind of more of the all in. Yeah.
right, a little bit ahead of the game. But I think here in the States, I think it's definitely starting to really catch on and is becoming quite popular because the way I view sustainability is not just using recycled content into your product line, but also trying to do material reduction. That goes a very long way. And it's not just material reduction for plastics, but for corrugate as well, and amongst many other types of components of packaging.
Yeah, how do we make things lighter? How do we make things stronger? And how do we use less material to create those products? Is really a huge sustainability push right now. As we continue to try to recover, PCR resin, which, I think the industry as a whole is doing a really great job, but the infrastructure just really isn't there yet in order to capture everything that's being put out. So, if we can look at sustainability from a material reduction standpoint, I think that's a good starting place for people who really want to be serious about it.
Well, the flows of recyclability is very important as well. What products are easy to recycle, and plastics has definitely a lot of components that can be recycled. I mean, I went into a Walmart recently and saw basically a drop off bin for plastics, essentially bags, film, you name it. You go right there and do it. So it's definitely starting to really become a hot button topic for sure, and I think it will continue to do so. And I'm sure the market will get stronger. So it's, and like I said, it's fantastic because as this show continues on, we're going to have people from all sorts of different areas in packaging, and so sustainability is something that's going to certainly be discussed. But it's good to see because I go into so many parks and like you look at benches, for example. I'm sure components in that bench at one time was a water bottle.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
That's being busted down and reused into making these plastic benches that quite frankly just last a very long time in the weather environments, especially.
Yeah. Especially in a place like Wisconsin.
Yeah, exactly. Or South Carolina, where it gets 100+ degrees every day. For
there you go.
Amount of time, right? So
there you go.
So yeah, there's a lot of really. Here's the thing: there's a lot of good news about packaging. There's a lot of great things happening, and it continues to. I think the most critical thing for everybody is to make sure innovation continues to happen. That's how you stay relevant, right? Not just in packaging, but your IT companies of the world. Everyone's got to innovate to stay current with the times.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
All right, so that was great, kind of getting a recap of your career so far. It's quite impressive, and so I want to conclude this very first program of the BTM podcast show with kind of some career advice, because it seems like packaging has been able to provide to you, and you've been able to do well with it, and that's great, and that's everyone's goal, right? Is to be able to do well at some point. So what kind of, we're kind of into the times of graduation here coming up, right? Especially for college, and students are getting into the marketplace, and people, there's no question, right? People are talking about the current state of the economy and where things may be heading later in the year. So maybe some concern, right?
Sure.
You got your student loans coming up. So, that's always on everyone's mind. So what is your advice getting out into college? Because, for me personally, I graduated with a radio broadcast degree. So right here is exactly what I was hoping to do. And I went into work into packaging. I've been now in packaging for 10 years. Never thought I would, but here I am 10 years later and enjoy it thoroughly. But kind of getting back a little bit with the podcast, kind of throwing it back. So what kind of advice do you have for people entering into the workforce and what to be on the lookout for?
Oh, man. So I thought about this a little bit, and it was I think my advice to people coming out of school right now is when you find that first job, be a sponge, soak up as much as you can, find a mentor, someone who is willing to not only help you from a career development standpoint, but from just like, a personal development standpoint. you're in school for 3, 4, 5 years, however long it takes you to get through college, and it's very regimented in a lot of ways.
All right.
The
And
working world is not like that.
no,
Find someone who you can who can teach you, who can help you grow and help you develop as a person.
life changes, right? You go into college
Life
and
changes.
you're focused solely on one aspect that you graduated with, but sometimes you just got to take the different avenue, right?
Yep.
If you're at a crossroad and there's more guarantee here, which is the path that I took, was more guarantee getting into the packaging industry and getting life started essentially at a young age, over going into a sector that, would be a struggle for quite some time and may work out well. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. And I'm still kind of at that starting point, right at, 30, 35, whatever it is. So I kind of went the route of getting into something that I thought could last much longer, and long and behold, it's packaging. So, but Travis, thank you again for joining us. It was a pleasure having you here as a guest, and, all the best to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Appreciate it, buddy.
Okay, thank you.